welcome to The Natural View. I'm Maggie Jacqua, and I'm joined by my co-host, Todd Polly. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Maggie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And we have a special guest here today from One Life Science. Joshua Tully is the VP of Business Development and Operations for the company. Welcome.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, Todd. Great to
Joshua.
meet you guys.
Yeah. So today we're talking about a topic that it's just really been gaining awareness. I'm hearing more and more about this, but I'm happy to dive into the science and also learn about what we can do because we keep hearing about microplastics in our environment, negative impacts on health. So I want to start with some basics, Joshua, so we really understand what the issue is here. So let's start at the very, very basic. What are microplastics?
Yeah, so microplastics. I go back to my days of watching The Graduate back in 1967. There being a great future in plastics. Now that we're understanding, there's a lot more consequence and downside to the success of plastics. But microplastics are either by design or by consequence what we're exposed to in the environment. They tend to be uh, range in size from 5 millimeters down to 1 nanometer. So, I mean, just a fraction of the width of a human hair, and we're being exposed to these microplastics on a constant basis in our environment. The pervasiveness is off the charts, and it's only increasing.
Yeah, as far as it seems like in the press, when they talk about it, they talk about the danger, but then it almost seems futile because it almost seems like they're everywhere. And I'm wondering if you can drill down a little bit, and maybe that's the case, but talk to us about the different sources and really help us understand, where they are and where we can find them in the environment.
Yeah. So look, I mean, as Maggie said, there's this growing awareness of microplastics. It's surging into the consumer consciousness in the same way that BPA did, a decade or two ago. People had never heard of it before, but now they're starting to gain that same awareness. So Todd, where are they coming from? People think about plastics as, oh, it's water bottles in the ocean. And yeah, that is a problem, but it's so much more pervasive than that. We're getting it in our food and beverages. We're getting it in the clothes that we're wearing. Um, I'm wearing some synthetic fiber right now, polyester, spandex. I mean, all of your synthetic fibers, they're all microplastics. Um, uh, Carpet. We're walking on synthetic carpet. The number one source of microplastics in the world, car tires. We're breathing in car tires every single day, and there's no way that we're going to get rid of cars anytime soon. So to your point, sometimes it does feel like it's futile. They just held the intergovernmental negotiating committee conference in Geneva, Switzerland last month to try to get governments to commit to reducing plastic production. With no big surprise, it failed miserably. There was no consensus. There was no direction. So at this point, plastics are scheduled to double in production by 2040 and triple by 2060. And just the day before, the Lancet is one of the best regarded medical journals in the world, and they wanted to come out with a really bold statement. So the day before, they published their article on microplastics and said, and I'm quoting here, plastics are a grave, growing, and under-recognized danger to human and planetary health. Plastics cause disease and death from infancy to old age and are responsible for health-related economic losses exceeding $1.5 trillion annually. That's today. It's going to double by 2040 in terms of production. It's going to triple by 2060. It's only getting bigger.
That is so alarming. And so you're saying like the tires, we're breathing that in. I never thought about that at all, but we're like the clothes that you're talking about, we're absorbing it? Like how?
We absorb it through the skin. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't even, we absorb it through little cuts and things like that, but we absorb it through our pores, through our hair follicles. It's airborne. So microplastics are being found at the peak of the most remote mountains in the world. Obviously, we hear about it in the oceans. They're everywhere. We're inhaling it. We're ingesting it. We're getting it from every conceivable source there.
Wild.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you know, once you're exposed. Obviously that can happen in all the ways you just explained, but
Yeah.
what's that mean to be exposed, and what are some of the implications? What happens once you're exposed?
Yeah. So look, the important thing is we're exposed, and I'm talking about full grown adults here. Our body is really good at assimilating these microplastics. Whether it's through the lungs, through the digestive tract, and they take residence throughout our body. It's almost one of the primary places that they end up being trapped is in the brain. But they're being found in the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, arteries, reproductive tissues, reproductive organs, adipose tissue or fat tissues. They're also being found in things like placentas. There was just a recent study showing 100% of placentas in the study tested positive for microplastics. So kids are being exposed, I would say, from day one, but it's really day one minus 180. They're getting it in the womb from day one. And the consequences of having those microplastics in our system are pretty serious.
Yeah, can you go through some of those consequences? What's happening in the body, and what are the health problems that we can suffer?
Yeah, so the real core of the issue is the promotion of reactive oxygen species, ROS, which inherently isn't a bad thing. These are naturally occurring compounds in the body that help with cell communication, cell signaling, and um, uh, uh, cell production, and immune activation. Um, but when it's out of control, or when we have too much, then it causes significant oxidative stress, and that can lead to chronic and systemic inflammation. And then there's just a cascade of consequences as a result of that. So that's, at the deepest core, that's the main issue is that oxidative stress. It creates what we call senescent cells. Those are the older, damaged cells that tend to misbehave. And then we start seeing, cellular and DNA damage, and gene expression gets a little wonky. And that's when we see significant consequences. And that goes through the body. The way that manifests, I mean, that's the core issue that really has to be addressed. But as a result of that, in the same way that we saw with BPA, it's a significant endocrine system disruptor. So now we're seeing hormonal issues, not only in adults, but we're seeing it in children. So, in the brain, we're seeing diminished brain development. Reproductive systems are not developing properly, or they're not functioning properly. Neuroinflammation. I mean, part of that systemic inflammation, we're seeing that in the brain as well. So we're actually seeing things like lower IQs that are directly linked to microplastics exposure. adipose tissue. Those are our fatty tissues. Really commonplace for them to build up. It creates that same type of inflammation, increases insulin resistance, promotes obesity, and then the end result is we're seeing increases in type 2 diabetes. And there are now studies linking all of these conditions directly to microplastics exposure.
Yeah, well, thanks for painting the picture. I mean, in terms of the implications, and I don't mean that.
It's a pretty grim picture.
That's grim.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but it really does, the way you set it up in terms of the pervasiveness of it and the health implications. I mean, it really points out how serious the problem is. So let's shift the conversation a little bit and let's start talking about what we can do. And I mean, first question is, can you detox from these? Can you remove those
Yeah.
by, practices you do at home, or how's that work?
Yeah, that is a really, really crucial question. I got into the industry back in the early 90s, and we focused on detoxification products. And it's a great category, and I love a lot of the ingredients there that support detoxification. When it comes to microplastics, particularly in the brain where they most commonly reside, no, there's no effective way based in the science to remove these from our body. There are free circulating microplastics, in our blood system or in our gut, and we can help eliminate those to some degree. But for the ones that are already trapped in our brain, in our liver, our kidneys, our testicles, we're just not getting them out. So what we have to do is we have to deal as aggressively as we can with the consequences of that exposure.
All right. So moving on to that, how do we do that?
Yeah. So look, I mean, this is a really exciting time for our industry. FDA just on Tuesday confirmed NMN as legal as a dietary supplement, and this is where One Life Science has led in the industry since we introduced our NMN product line in 2022. And this has been our focus in terms of longevity, but trying to bring innovation into that space and maximize that. So the key with NMN is boosting our NAD plus levels, and this dramatically improves our ability to take care of cellular and DNA repair. NAD plus is responsible for all of your mitochondrial energy, 100% of your cellular and DNA repair. So if we can keep those levels elevated, we're going to have the best outcomes possible. But the other research, our research in NMN is what brought us to microplastics. That's what actually helped us get into this category. It was groundbreaking research showing that the senolytic effect and the SIRT1 activation of boosting NAD plus levels significantly addresses those oxidative stress type of issues. So that senolytic effect, those older senescent cells, our bodies need to be able to identify those cells and purge those cells from our body to make room for healthy, properly functioning cells. So that's the real importance behind the senolytic benefit, that SIRT1 activation. That's really stimulating our immune systems to identify those bad and abnormal and misbehaving type of cells and purge them from the system. So that's what really brought us to the microplastics, and that's the real core of the product that we've produced.
Well, speaking of products, let's talk a little bit about MP Pro Microplastics Defense. Can you talk about some of the ingredients that are in it and, how they help the body in terms of combating some of these microplastics?
Yeah. So, I mean, we touched on NMN, which is the real core of the product there. But then we've included other ingredients like high potency resveratrol and pterostilbene, which are polyphenols, which additionally support senolytic activity and SIRT1 activation as well. So really, really important there. And those are going to help, again, reduce those oxidative stress type of conditions. Beyond that, we've taken it a step further with N-acetylcysteine, glutathione. Glutathione is often referred to as the master antioxidants. N-acetylcysteine is one of my favorite ingredients in our industry. Incredibly supports liver function and helps with not only that oxidative stress, but also our body's ability to detox. If someone overdoses on Tylenol and they go to the hospital, what are they given? They're given N-acetylcysteine. So it's a really spectacular ingredient to protect our liver and help us detox. Beyond that, we do a really good form of vitamin C with ascorbyl palmitate. Again, the combination of those three strong antioxidants help reduce oxidative stress. We don't stop there, though. We also look at some of the most recent clinical research on probiotics, which we use in a number of our products. So we use Lactobacillus plantarum and Lactobacillus paracasi, and there's new studies out there that show that those can actually bind with microplastics in our gut and help purge them from our system, and then promote microbiome health. Because one of the things is the microplastics that we get in our food and beverages wreak havoc on our microbiome and our gut health in general. So what we're trying to do first and foremost is address the underlying issues, the effects of microplastic exposure. And then secondarily, we're trying to reduce the microplastic load to some degree. It's not going to do anything about the microplastics that we're inhaling, the car tires. I'm a parent. I send my kids down to the playground, and they're playing on that AstroTurf material with the crushed up car tires. They're breathing it in. Sometimes I feel like I'm a failure as a parent there, but they're everywhere. So
You can't avoid it.
yeah, you just can't avoid it. So we're just trying to reduce the load as much as possible and address the side effects of those microplastic exposures.
So we have retailers who watch the podcast along with healthcare practitioners. So I'm just wondering, because a lot of, like me as a consumer, some of what you're saying, I'm like, oh, it's even worse than I kind of realized.
Right.
But how are consumers responding to the issue of microplastics? Are they fully understanding? Are there education gaps? And then in addition to that, like, do you have any advice for educating consumers without like overwhelming them and being like, oh, well, it's all
Yeah,
lost.
yeah. So look, it's a good question. I mean, I just presented to 50 or 60 different retailers at a couple of our trade shows down in Florida, and there is definitely a gap there. As we talked at the beginning, there is a growing awareness, and it's surging into consumer consciousness. But there does need to be some pretty dramatic education on just how dramatic the effects are, and I think that's why the Lancet came out as boldly as they did. They really wanted to be in your face. This is underreported. It is a very serious problem, and it's only getting more serious. So I think they really wanted to be upfront with that. So in terms of retailers, I look at the experience with BPA. There is going to have to be growing education in this space. There needs to be some honesty about what we can do and what we can't do in terms of dietary supplements. I came from an allopathic household. You did whatever the doctor said. You took whatever drug that the doctor gave you. So for me, coming into the dietary supplement industry, um, it's often met with a lot of skepticism. So that's one thing that we really lean into. We really look at those clinical studies, see what we can actually accomplish with dietary supplements, and we want to be as honest as we possibly can be. So I think one of the bullets on our product is detoxification, but it's way down the list because we can do it to a small degree, but we really have to be honest and we have to educate the consumers of the best methods that we have to address the issue and be honest about what we can't do.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I think about the issue we've talked so much about and then the product you're selling, you really do have this huge challenge and opportunity in the sense that, yes, you're selling something, but you're also trying to educate the industry, consumers, and everyone about just really how important it is to think about microplastics and the implications, especially
Yeah,
at the rate that we're seeing it grow. So
yeah.
having said that, I mean, if you're going to, as we wrap up here, if you're going to take a minute just to talk about or talk to industry peers, is there one thing about this whole issue that you'd like to address, like one final point you'd like to address to try to get the message across?
Yeah, look, I got into the industry because I needed a job. Um, you know, I certainly needed to pay the rent um, and pay the bills. And as one of the principles in One Life Science, that's always in my mind. But that's not our core goal. Our core goal is to address the most significant challenges um, that our humans are facing, and that's why we got into the longevity space with NMN. That's why we pioneered our GLP-1 Pro product 2 years ago, very very early on the game to help address um, weight management. Um, and that's why we're looking at microplastics. We try to deliver therapeutic value to the consumer and get it into as many consumers' hands as possible. So I would implore people in our industry. I got into the industry. The motivation is to improve um, not only lifespans but health spans. Um, and that's what I would implore other companies to do. I watch other companies um, and I have friends in the industry and I applaud their efforts and whenever I see them doing something good. And here's an opportunity for our industry to really lead. When I met with those top retailers, I said we want to be tip of the spear. We want to lead the way in terms of making an impact in the human condition, and that's what I would implore other companies um, to champion.
Excellent. Well, we support that as well. We're happy to help get the message out. I want to thank you for joining us. I mean, I learned I learned a lot. I had a lot to go back and think about. I'm gonna be looking around my house and my clothes. Oh, but knowing that there's some action that can be taken and just being aware, as you were saying, getting that education out, so important. So thank you for joining us and getting us up to speed.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Todd.